Hey, Husker Nation. Here, Justin St. Clair, men's and women's head track and field coach, University of Nebraska, with
Rhema Otabor, the current NCAA champion in the women's jav.
So we're gonna do a little breakdown on, Rema's throwing. Rema last weekend defended her national title. She is the two-time national champion in the women's javelin. She is currently the collegiate record holder in the women's javelin, the NCAA meet record holder in the javelin, the Bohemian national record holder, the school record holder, and in this attempt here at the national meet, hit the automatic Olympic A standard for the Olympic Games in Paris this summer. So yeah, we'll just play a quick little video of the attempt, and it'll just kind of give a big perspective on the throw itself and not say too much about it quite yet. It's always good when you see the officials running towards the javelin because it's gone too far. That's always a great thing. On this particular throw, this is round 5 out of 6 in the attempts, and all the prior attempts, Rema was doing a great job executing the throw pretty much how we wanted, minus the flight.
Yeah.
The flight was getting a little bit too steep, and javelin is very, very sensitive depending on the wind condition, whether if it's a tailwind, headwind, crosswind. So angles and angles of attack are very, very important. The running speed and the release velocity on all of the throws probably about equal, but the release angle was totally different. And that was the difference of throwing consistently 56 meters versus 64 meters. And really, that was the goal leading into this attempt, was just flatten out the flight of the javelin, because we're throwing into a headwind, and in Eugene, the wind kind of comes over the top of the scoreboard, so if the angle gets too high, it just really pushes the javelin down. So being able to really have a clean flight that rises within the wind stream really makes a big, big difference. And really, that was kind of the only thing, at least from a technical standpoint, that I saw different. Maybe from an emotional standpoint, maybe there's more energy into it, maybe a little bit harder on the strike or something. But from a technical aspect, that was the big, big difference, because again, the running speed, about the same. The transition with the crossovers, all about the same. Release velocity, I would say, probably about the same. It's really hard to measure without all the biomechanics, on hand. But you can see, like for example, when the javelin is flying, you'll see that it's flying very level in the sky. So it takes off pretty here, but then now here we are flying pretty level. So that it's going through the wind and not underneath the wind, or the wind pushing it down or anything. It's using the wind to its advantage. And with the female javelin, if you can control the flight in a headwind, it's always going to go, it's going to go pretty well.
Going into the 5th attempt, I was getting a little frustrated because I kept throwing 56, and and like Coach Justin keeps saying, I keep throwing the javelin at a poor angle that wasn't helping me get the throw that I want. And every time I would go back and talk to him, he would tell me that I need to lower my angle, or I need to keep closed a little longer. And I was trying to apply those things, but unfortunately for the first 4 attempts, it wasn't working out. But going into the 5th round, I tried to take a deep breath. I tried to remember what he told me. And I just ran down the runway and threw. And let it fly. And yeah.
Yeah, that's, the nature of the javelin, it is so sensitive to timing and angles. It's not about just seeing how hard you can throw it or how fast you can throw it. The sequencing in which things are happening are critical. And Rema has a tremendous ability to run really fast on the javelin runway. that is really her preference. Now, we go back and forth with it a lot because I say, Rema, I need you to slow down a little bit because it's not necessarily about just running really fast, stopping and trying to throw. It's about running and converting the energy that you have created with the run and transferring it into the javelin. So a lot of times you'll watch individuals, they'll come down, they'll run really, really fast, stop, and then try to throw. The javelin per se is not something that you think about throwing with the arm. It's not really an arm throw. It's really technically learning how to run as fast as you can and controlled, but also running, stopping, and throwing all in one. So it's not, hey, just run fast or just throw hard. It's a combination of all of it. And if those things line up, great things are going to happen. But if you bypass some of those things and just think, oh, I'm just going to throw it, or I'm just going to run really hard, the sequence of timing really just gets kind of off. I would equate it very much to like golf. Like when you are in the tee box and you're thinking, hey, okay, I have my driver out. It's not just about swinging as hard as you can and hitting the ball. There's a sequence that has to happen. And if it happens properly, it's really easy. And if it's kind of off, then it's really off. So this was a great view, kind of overhead view of the entire run, transition of the flight, kind of really paints a great picture of the flight. Now we'll take a look at the back view of the attempt. In the back view, it shows you a couple different angles and shows you kind of what if you're opening too early or if the hand's going too early or anything like that. But I'll go ahead and play the video and let Rema kind of talk about this throw here.
All right, so from this angle, I like how you could kind of see whether or not I'm controlling my javelin relatively well. So when you go from like the straight ahead run into that crossover, what I was working on recently is trying to keep the javelin stable. And I feel like I did a relatively good job of that here. Something I wish I could work on or improve a little better is kind of how close I would get to the line in the front. And so if I could give myself more space, then I'd be able to use my power. And I would definitely be able to get an even better throw than what I had that day.
Yeah, so what she's referring to in that situation, like through all of this, let me just pause it, maybe, right? So leading into this position here, like all these things are, a really nice job. We're looking at like where the hand is here in relation to the foot, the hand, everything's, lined up really well. The shoulders are closed, the javelin line is closed, the hand is still in line with the left foot. All of those are, important technical aspects that I'm looking at. I don't always talk about all those things with Rema because, again, the last thing that you want to do when you're coming down the runway and getting ready to throw is thinking about, well, is this in the right spot? There's so many things that are going on so quickly that if you're thinking about it, boy, by the time that moment transitions and it's too late. It happens way, way too quick. Yeah. So what Rema is referring to is, so here's the foul line.
Yep.
That line there, you cannot go crossed. If you go across that foul line, then they don't measure the throw. It doesn't count for anything. Rema notoriously, and it's not because we don't practice it. We practice it a great deal. And she has learned to really become great at it in training, especially when we're not actually throwing the javelin. But when we get into competition, getting as close to the line, you want to be as close as you can, but you don't want to be so close that everything kind of shuts down and timing gets a little bit off.
Yeah, that you kind of like watching the line as you throw because you cannot cross the line, and so you're like, oh, the line is coming, let me stop, And so, yeah, hopefully within the next few weeks I could work on not being so close to the line. I think I was able to take like one step. The minute I hit my block leg down, I took one step and I immediately had to push back because I had no room to take a next step forward.
Yeah, so you can see, it's from
right
this angle, it's kind of hard to tell, but she's on her tippy toe on her right foot, trying to make sure that she's stable enough to not go over that line.
Right.
One thing that we always talk about is, and we can watch it at different videos as well, but there's a spot on the track.
Right here.
It's hard to see in this video, but there's a little line. Well, let's get rid of this.
Press
I
it.
want that.
Okay, it's on, I think.
There's this little thing right there, and that's kind of the measuring spot. That's how they set up the sector. It's 8 meters from the foul line to that line. And I know for a fact that if Rema goes from the forward run to the transition run, and she withdraws on the opposite side of that, she's going to foul. If she can withdraw, ideally, about half a meter behind it, she's going to have enough space to really take whatever kind of throw that she wants from an energy standpoint. But 9.5 out of 10 times, Rema withdraws on top of that thing. And then consequently, there's some technical things that happen in the front. So that's always a point of emphasis with Rema. And it's easier said than done. It's pretty hard to do. But when we can get more disciplined with doing this, these other aspects become even better. And so that's kind of like one of the big focuses, because we'll see when we look at, say for example, we'll take this throw here. This is this year at Drake Relays. This is a 59 meter throw. We're throwing into a really strong head crosswind.
Yeah.
And all the aspects are pretty much the same. But as you can see, like Rema gets a little too close to this line. And if you stop it, like she's making her transition, this would be the 8 meter line there.
Yeah.
So she's doing a little bit better job there.
But I transitioned.
She's transitioned behind it, but she's running a little bit faster in this competition than the prior competition that we just had.
Yep. And I'm going from a farther back runner.
A longer approach,
Yeah.
yeah. So in this competition, we're using a little bit of a longer run, which is Rema's preference. And ultimately, that would be my preference as well, as long as it's manageable.
Yeah.
Again, in my opinion, it's not just because it's further or faster, that does not always mean better. So we had made a decision leading into the regional meet that we were going to shorten the run a little bit so we can control it a little bit better.
Yep.
And so now that we are done with the national meet, the focus is going to be getting back to this approach to where we can actually run at a full speed and really kind of get into a position where Rema can attack the throw just like she did at the national meet. And if that can be accomplished, then people at the Olympics will be paying attention. I can tell you that much right now. So she's going, in this situation, she's going relatively fast, really. And things that we're looking at from like a technical standpoint, especially like with the withdrawal, like we're trying to make sure, again, when the javelin is withdrawn, that the javelin is staying level, the hand here is staying up and not turned down. These are things that I'm looking at. I'm also looking at what's happening right through here, because where the hips are in the run, just like a sprinter, if a sprinter is running this way or if they're running with things under them, the energy transfer from the ground is totally different. And so this is something that we, in my mind, we work on. It's not always executed how it needs to be, but it's still always a part of a focus So I'll just kind of stop it right there in this position, and then I'll talk about it, then I'll let Rema do some talking.
Okay.
So from a technical side, what you see, because Rema knows she's getting too close at this point in time. Like when you are throwing the javelin, you know when you're too close, you can feel it. What ends up happening is the hand starts moving early, because you know, well, I don't have a lot of time, I have to throw it. So this wants to kind of go, and this side wants to open up a little bit early.
Mm-hmm. And this is all happening even before my block leg hits the ground, which is not what you want, because then I wouldn't be able to get as much pull from this position at all, and that definitely shortens my distance a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, because ideally here in this situation, this left leg would be
On the floor.
in contact with the ground,
Mm-hmm.
and you wouldn't see this extension of this leg already. Because when all of this starts happening too early, then all of this starts happening too early. It's kind of a chain reaction effect. And then what you'll see is in the next clip, because we're getting a little bit too close. Me personally, I don't understand how Rema can throw as far as she can and still kind of do some of the things that she does. It blows my mind. It's a great tool to have, but ideally it's not the most ideal in every situation. Because here what you see is like a lot of the hips breaking, and the legs, like everything is buckling here, in result of kind of being too close and the timing of the legs. But again, she knows she's too close, so the goal is, I got to get rid of this javelin so I don't foul. And this becomes how you have to do it. But what she has done really, really well, regardless of any of this, she has maintained a very, very stable javelin. And this was a really windy meet. She threw, very well, all things considering. And like this, boy, I would say like if this is a non-windy meet, this throw probably goes 61, 62 meters. But it just kind of goes to show like the ability that Rema has. She has such a great skill set of being able to run and create power. It's always not the best position, which is things that we always are working on, but she still has the ability to execute, a great distance regardless. So,
Thanks, dude.
Unfortunately, the consequence of some of these things happening technically causes a lot of pain on that thing. Javelin throwing, you are the injury, the risk of injury is pretty high, regardless of if you're throwing super far or kind of just learning how to throw, because there's so many elements that go into it, whether if it's your knee, your groin, your Achilles, your shoulder, your elbow. So you have to really build a great foundation throughout the winter months. And what you do in the winter kind of leads into what you can do into the spring. Now, originally Rema's plan, we had a plan this year. We were going to redshirt this year. So some of the winter training was a little bit modified. And throughout the spring, a couple things popped up and we said, well, hey, we got to compete. And we put the fast forward button on and competed. And Rema came out blazing right away. And the intensity of a meet competition throwing versus training throwing, it's a lot different. So when your body's not 100% prepared for that, that intensity kind of impacts, some things. And that's where Rema had a little bit of a strain in the elbow. And we really had to kind of back it down a little bit and say, okay, well, we can do X, we can do Y, but we can't do a lot of javelin throwing. So we worked around what we could do to make sure that, hey, when we were in this spot now, she was ready to go. But there's a lot of tricks with javelin throwing. We only throw javelin maybe twice a week, and one session is relatively easy. One session is a little bit more intense, and then twice a week we'll throw medicine balls and do jumping and sprinting. So it's for us, it's not just throwing javelin. There's a lot of variables that go into it. At this time of year, we'll probably only throw once a week in training. Like today, Rema maybe took 10 throws.
Yeah.
And they were not hard throws. They were not intense throws. There's some easy technical things and just working on a couple basic things, and that's it. And Rema has a competition on Saturday in Canada. And so right now it's not so much about like doing too much. It's just doing enough to keep the body, healthy but active and kind of not losing the feeling of the throwing. So we'll take a look at a video from last year. Again, this is another 59-meter throw. And after this throw, this weekend, Rema had bothered her elbow at this meet.
Yeah, because you could see I don't have my...
No elbow sleeve here.
Yep.
And now, javelin throwers, it's pretty common to wear an elbow sleeve. And now it just becomes like, hey, I just wear it because it feels right. You don't always need it. It's just one of those things that just feels good, so you just wear it. And I don't think you're in a spot now where you need it, but it just feels, hey, it just makes it feel nice.
Yeah, it's almost like it gives me a kind of comfort, like almost like I trying to be proactive about things in a sense. But if I had to throw without it, I think I could. Yeah.
Yeah. So this meet is in Baylor in Waco, Texas. Again, as you can see, really hugging that line, kind of Rema's MO. Again, running a little bit faster than what we are currently.
Yep. And it's so funny because when we cut down my run up, because my run up was longer than that at the beginning of the season, and I was going even faster than that. I thought this was moving too slow, and I was like, I like that I have more control and I'm more consistent with my throws being farther. But I was like, oh, I just can't wait to get back to the longer run up and the faster run up, But I've been learning like this is the way to go for right now.
Well, and even last year, Rema went to the Pan American Games. She went to World Championships as well in Budapest. And then we were competing in Chile at the Pan American Games where Rema was second. And at that point in time, at that season, she was at a longer run and executed well. Timing was really well. This is where Rema threw over 60 meters for the first time. But you'll see, like, again, kind of here's the 8-meter mark. For me, this is always a critical spot. I know essentially the first couple steps of the run, if she's going to be on that or not on there. A lot of times, this right here, this zone tells me everything. And what happens here dictates what happens there, and then so on and so forth. And when I was a little bit of a younger coach, I only looked at the last 3 meters of the throw. But I realize now, what happens back here dictates everything else. So some of the things that we have changed from, last year to this year, again, as you can see, like in the running, like through here, everything is like falling here, and then the right leg, it becomes kind of like a teeter-totter action. Acceleration, deceleration, acceleration. So that has been something that we worked on quite a bit. Because when you start getting like your pelvic out of position, you're falling, and then you end up, oh shucks. You accelerate, decelerate, you reach with the legs. There's just a lot of things that kind of happen. Really kind of in this position here, Rema's actually doing a relatively good job. The arm is still behind the foot here. The arm is still nice and long. Still pretty closed. Angle's not, too steep here. Sitting a little bit too much right here and a little bit stuck right there, but just little small things. So part of, what happens, again, she gets too close here. And it doesn't look like it's too close, but when you are actually thinking about throwing and recovering,
Yeah.
it is too close, because ideally you want to be about almost a whole javelin length behind that line when you're throwing, if you really want it to be executed properly. But because she gets a little bit close, she gets an extension here a little bit too soon, and the shoulders are starting to open too early. And the reason why the shoulders, you don't want the shoulders to open too early, because that changes the length of the pull of the javelin. It's kind of like when you pull a rubber band back, you want to stretch it back as much as you can and then let it go, so the elasticity does all the work and not actually the throw itself doing all the work. If that makes sense.
Well, I'd say Coach Sinclair has a lot of wisdom, and he has been so kind as to share it with all of us. And I want to say that I like that he had a fresh pair of eyes when looking at my technique. You know, in the beginning when I came, he used to be a lot more quiet than what I was like a lot more quiet in terms of coaching. Like, say I do a throw, he wouldn't necessarily say something right away, but he'd give it a second, and then he would tell me something maybe after like the third throw that I had, and it'd usually be something very useful. It might not be always what I think it is, but most times it ends up being correct or the good thing to focus on at the time. And then he also tends to do a good job at communicating with us, and that's something I could really appreciate, you know, and encouraging us too, you know. And I don't know, I feel like the entire Jav squad and even throwing squad could probably attest to this, but he, like I said before, he's very encouraging, and he doesn't necessarily, at least for me, he doesn't put too much pressure on me when I go in to throw. Instead, he like tries to build me up, you know, and that's something I enjoy, and I hope that the other throwers feel the same way.
Well, guys, thanks for tuning in, learning a little bit about javelin throwing. There's a lot of variables that go into it, and just a really small glimpse. There's a lot of work that goes into it, a lot of patience, because javelin is, well, really track and field in general. There's a lot of ups and downs, and you can never get too down, you can never get too up. We have a great squad that Husker throwers that are going to continue out throughout the summer. We have a few that are qualified for the Olympics. We're getting set for the Olympic trials. So go ahead and stay tuned in, and hopefully we can watch Rema and the others continue their success throughout this year and see if we can continue to build the program.